And coming up next for folks at home, a record number of black Republicans are running in the primaries ahead of midterms. But whose interests do they really represent? We're going to talk about that after the break. You don't want to miss this conversation. Okay, I'm just going to say it. I don't know a lot of black Republicans who really ride for black people. I mean, just take a look at just some of the things they're saying.
Why are we voting the way that we vote? What are the policies that we truly believe in? Because, you know, really, the black population, other minority populations, were generally more conservative. We just don't vote that way. And so they know that I'm a danger to them.
Senator Lewis, one of the greatest senators that's ever been, and for African American, that was absolutely incredible. I think for them to throw his name on a bill of the voting rights, I think is a shame. First of all, you know, when you look at the bill, it just doesn't fit what John Lewis stood for.
Hear me clearly. America is not a racist country.
Okay, those are all things not ever heard at the cookout, let me assure you. So with a record number of black Republicans running for office who seem to represent the interests of the GOP and not necessarily the community, I really do want to have an honest intellectual exchange about why. So back with me now is justice correspondent for The Nation, that's Elie Mystal, and the author of the New York Times bestselling book, Allow Me to Retort, and making his cross-connection debut, this is a friend of mine, someone I've known for a long time, Rufus Montgomery. He's a lobbyist and Republican political consultant, so I know he is definitely up for this conversation. So Rufus, you know, you and I have known each other for some years, my friend, and I thought you'd be good to contribute some intellectual exchange to this. And I'm curious, what is it about the GOP that's so appealing to you personally? While you just heard, while so many GOP policies run contrary to the interest of the black diaspora.
It's what is actually shown on the media, Tiff. You just started out, and thank you for having me. You started out saying it's not talked about at the cookout. It actually is talked about at the cookout. Across the country, African Americans are talking about what's going on with the current administration, what's actually happening. I quote Ice Cube in saying that he talked to two parties. He talked to the Democrats, he talked to the Republicans, and one party said, we love what you're doing, we'll take some of what you have now and we'll do more of it when we get reelected. And the other one said, talk to us later. Well, the time now is later. And in cookouts around the country, you'll hear people talking and having questions, African Americans asking questions. What are African Americans getting for that actual vote? You're giving 90% of the time, most of the time for one party, but what are you getting in return? I can talk to you for about 45 minutes about what Donald Trump did to help African Americans very specifically.
Well,
and
sadly,
this is being talked about.
We don't have 45 minutes. And I just want to be clear. So I'm not saying things aren't discussed at the cookout. I'm saying those specific black GOP members are saying things that you do not hear at the cookout. Maybe we go to different cookouts, my friend. But I want to kick it to you, Elie, because I do think Rufus makes some really valid points about the Democratic Party. I'm certainly not here to be a mouthpiece for the Democrats. We can do a whole segment on that. But we're talking specifically about the Republican Party. Elie, why? What do you think about Rufus's claim that Donald Trump did a lot to help the African-American community? Because I can tick off the top of my head some things that he did that was very harmful to the community. Your thoughts?
Yeah, there are lots of things that he did to hurt the African-American community, and I'm sure some of the things he did helped a couple of, brothers here and there. Look, I make a hard distinction between black conservatives, of which there are many, one of whom just was elected mayor of New York City, in fact, and these tokens who are out here right now shucking and jiving for their white handlers. And the way that you can know the difference between a token and a person who just happens to have conservative views is that the black conservative has an argument for why their policies will help the black community. So I'm sure Rufus and I could go back and forth about where the capital gains tax should be. And Rufus would argue that the capital gains tax would help black people, or lowering the capital gains tax would help black people build wealth. And I could disagree with that, right? Do you think Herschel Walker understood that sentence? Do you? Because there is no argument that suppressing the votes of African Americans helps the African American community. There's no argument that police brutality helps black people get stronger. There's no argument that gerrymandering away black representation in Congress helps the African American community, right? So the problem is that black conservatives right now, the ones who are still with the Republican Party, are running on a platform that is against the interests of black people, as opposed to black conservatives who, again, we can have interesting policy debates about how best to move forward.
Well, I want to bring Rufus back in the conversation on that point because I do. I think Ellie made some good points, Rufus. But when you think about voter suppression, that's coming from the GOP. They benefit by keeping the ballot box white. When you think about racial gerrymandering, they benefit from that. When you think about police brutality and police unions, who are largely Republicans, that benefits the white community. And these have become the principal talking points for the Republican Party. So again, I would ask, why should black people support black Republicans who seem to have a skill in making conservative white folks comfortable, but certainly not speaking on the large diaspora?
I can speak for myself, Tiff. I come from a military family.
Yeah.
My dad served 37 years in the United States Army. We both served in Desert Storm together. We have conservative values. My parents, 55 years they'll be together in August of this year. Okay, I can talk to you about what works for me. Not here to defend any bad actions or anything that anyone's done that's actually bad. But let's talk about what things Republicans actually did. Let's talk about the First Step Act. You had the Democrat administration for 8 years that didn't do what was done and that Donald Trump signed into an act when he signed in the First Step Act.
Just for the record.
But for the first 2 years, he did have a Democrat. But neither here or there. To the point of what Ela was saying, every time that there's a Democrat in office, why don't we fix the things that you continue to talk about over the last, 50 to 60 years? We talk about where the Republicans and how Republicans tend to support veterans. Republicans brought the words HBCU, brought that into the forefront where it had never been brought before. My alma mater borrowed $120 million from the HBCU Capital Financing Program. That's an infrastructure type deal, and $111 million of that was wiped out as a result of what Donald Trump did. So we can talk about very specific things.
People should be able to vote as easily as white people. Do you think that black
let's
people
talk about voters. Let's talk about voters.
I do want to point out that your alma mater is FAMU. So I do want to say Rufus went to an HBCU. Yes. I have to get that shout out in there. And listen, I want to, this conversation is too big to fit in this block, so I want you guys to both stick around, and I want you to answer that question. I'm coming straight to you on the other side of the break, Rufus. I was curious your thoughts. So stick with us. This is a good conversation.
We'll be
right back.
I want to talk about voter suppression. Yeah.
All right, fiery conversation. Ellie Massal and Rufus Montgomery are back with me. Rufus, I'm coming straight to you on the voter suppression question because I think that is a legitimate one. There have been over 300 voter suppression bills introduced across this country. Voter suppression has always been a tool and tactic of the GOP, but lately it's been based on a lie that Donald Trump had the election stolen from him. Curious your thoughts to Ellie's question. Do you believe that the GOP is helping everyone vote fairly and freely in this country?
There's 50 states, and they're done differently. I can talk to you about my state. I can talk to you about the voting bill that passed in Georgia last year, and it was a great bill. I worked on it. You heard these things out of D.C. I had family members calling and saying,
"Are you talking Georgia?" I just want to make sure you're in Georgia.
Yes, out of Georgia. I don't know about what's going on in all the different states and what they're doing.
But you think the rights are? You worked on that, but you think it's fair?
Yes, I worked on that. Yes, I worked on it. Okay. I think it's fair. If you think about it, no one really brought up a big stick about it until the end. If you go back and ask people that talked to me about that bill, I said,
certainly did on this show, my friend Rufus.
When you go back and you read, when you go there, okay. Well, my question to you is Georgia better or worse than Delaware or New York? Chuck Schumer's from New York. Let's compare Georgia to New York. Let's compare Georgia to Delaware.
But Rufus, I would say you're talking about Chuck Schumer, and the voter policies come from state legislatures. I mean, that's where all these garbage policies are coming from. And I'm trying to curious, because some of the things in the bill that people are not, in Georgia specifically, that people cannot provide food and water in the state of Georgia. You know, I grew up in Georgia, so we can talk about this. You have seen in black neighborhoods the lines wrapped around buildings, the routine closing of polls in Georgia, and they have a bill saying that you cannot give people standing in those lines water. That is specifically planned to target black and brown voters because there was a multiracial, multi-ethnic coalition that helped send Senators John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock to Congress, tilting the balance in the favor of Democrats. You're saying this bill
what if someone puts a needle?
Not bad. Go right ahead.
I'm saying, what if someone puts a needle and they put something into the water? What if someone, taints the food or taints the actual water?
Okay, well, this is
asinine,
Rufus. That's asinine, because that has happened for a long time, and that has never happened. Like, I want to have an intellectual exchange, not these ridiculous, somebody could put a needle. Go ahead, Ellie.
Yeah, I mean, look,
Who would be
Rufus,
responsible?
Who took away the Voting Rights Act in 2013, right? Was that Democrats or Republicans? 2013, Shelby County v. Holder. Who took that away? That was Republican John Roberts, who eviscerated the Voting Rights Act in 2013. Let's fast forward to 2021, Brnovich v. Arizona. Who said that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act was no longer applicable? Do you know what Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act does? Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is how I get to sue for racism in voting. Who took that away? Was it Democrats? No, no, no. That would be Sam Alito, John Roberts, Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, Clarence Thomas. That's 5 people, all appointed by Republicans, Rufus, not Democrats.
Okay, but think about. Let's be real for a
Arizona admitted
let's be
racial minorities with their
come on now. Let's
Go ahead, Rufus.
be real for a minute. Y'all are familiar with the nuclear option that Harry Reid put in place, and he said he wasn't going to put it all the way to the Supreme Court level. John McCain told him, "Don't do it. Don't do it, Democrats. Don't do it," because when the Republicans, hold on, I'll let you talk, man. Let me talk.
Right.
When the Republicans get in charge, they are going to apply it at the Supreme Court level. They did, and 3 Republicans actually made it through. They made it through. So we can talk about voting all we're there. I want to find out, well, what did your vote actually get? You have the House, you have the Senate, you have the White House, and you're still crying about voter suppression. How much more voter suppression do you need?
Because I don't have 5 Supreme Court
At what point are you going to move? At what
justices
point are you going to move from talking about voting suppression and moving into outcomes, particularly for black people? Okay, every 2 years, every 4 years, we hear vote, 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 vote. But what are you specifically getting for your vote? What are you saying to black people after you say voting? That's fine. I agree with you. No voter suppression. Let's end it. But what happens next? What are you specifically doing to help black people
You know, Rufus,
with
I
that
have to
vote?
tell you,
And I don't
I
hear
think
that
that's
from
a fair question. Well, you hear it definitely on this show, and I think that is a fair question. What are black voters getting for their vote? We have to go away with these terms like the black vote. There are black voters. So, you guys, we're way over time. This is a conversation. Rufus, you have to come back on the show because I do want to give you a chance. Ellie, you're back all the time, so I have to have you both back together to continue this conversation because we're in the midterm year, and there'll be a lot of opportunity to talk about how these parties will serve the rising majority. So thank you both for a very fiery discussion.